everybody, it's Pat Love from eXp Realty in North Vancouver. I'm here today with Lisa Bournelis. She's a nice neighbor in Upper Lonsdale. She lives quite close to me. And we have been trying to get together for several months to talk about a book that she's written called Louie and the Dictator. Sorry, I almost said Louie the Dictator. And it's rather timely. We managed to get together for October, which is probably amongst many other awareness months, but it's Mental Health Awareness Month. And Lisa tells me there's a little week in there just specifically for OCD. So let's get on. Thank you, Lisa, for taking time out of your day to talk to me.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be speaking with you, Pat.
Okay, thanks. All right, let's get started. So, Lisa, I know that you're, I've told everybody you're a mom and you're in Upper Lonsdale. And so can you tell me a little bit more about what it is you do and what it is you've done, maybe?
Yes, absolutely. I'm a transformation specialist in one of Canada's largest health authorities within Fraser Health. And my job is to lead people compassionately through change, big disruptive change like a global pandemic. So I've been the person in the background supporting the patient movement through our acute care system from when they arrive in emergency and then through to the community and back into discharge at home. So it's a busy time.
Oh, wow.
We've seen lots of people coming in, obviously, with COVID, but also a lot of patients who've been very deconditioned because they've been holding off going into hospitals, but now they're finding that their heart conditions and other things are exacerbated. So certainly a very busy time right now.
Wow. So during all that, how on earth did you have time to write a book?
Like many of you, I don't know if you can relate to this experience. At the height of the pandemic, everything felt like Groundhog Day, like the movie, kind of a freakish repetition of the last. And I was feeling very, very stuck during that time. While this was going on, I also have a child diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder. So this added to the complexity and the challenges of being a parent, having to work extraordinary hours remotely during healthcare, having to homeschool and support him with his exposure and response therapy. And like many of you, we found all of our resources were suddenly cut off. And so this became an incredible challenge. And really, just as a means of coping and trying to raise awareness around the impact of both the pandemic and lack of resources around mental health for children, I just started to write. And what I wrote was a story called Louie and the Dictator, based on my son's experiences with obsessive compulsive disorder during the pandemic. My hope is that, say, an anxious or neurodiverse child, or even a parent who reads it will understand that there are things you can do. There are shifts in mindsets you can take that can really help to transform your circumstances. I also wanted kids who with these conditions to also see themselves as heroes of their own stories. They're often unrepresented in literature, or they're sidekicks that are kind of goofy sidekicks. And in this spirit, my hope is that this will raise awareness for the condition. And I'm also donating a portion of my royalties to BC Children's Pediatric OCD Research Clinic, who were so helpful to our family prior to the pandemic.
Well, that's wonderful. Now you've gone and stole a question off me, so I'm going to have to readjust, recalculating like on the GPS, recalculating. Let's see. Okay, well, why don't you tell me the book itself? You wrote it to help your son at first, yes? Okay, could you tell us how it helped him?
I wanted him to realize that, well, for those, I'll take a step back. For those who don't understand OCD as a condition, it's not the cutesy disorder of wanting everything like so. And it's not just about hand washing and contamination fears like you see in the films. It's actually very debilitating. If you can imagine the thing you're most scared of in the entire world occurring, if you don't submit to a compulsion, that's a terrible burden for a child to carry. So my first goal was I wanted him to understand that he's not his thoughts. So the dictator is kind of our cheeky name for the voice in his head who's bothering him. That is the only time he's allowed to swear. Sometimes he's allowed to call him another deliciously naughty nickname, which he can't repeat in public, but it's okay if he repeats in his head to shut that voice down. And so with that in mind, I blended in some of the things I learned in exposure and response therapy into the story. So if you're just a regular person reading this, it's a great fun adventure, a rollicking adventure. But weaved into it in a very non-clinical safe way are ideas that kids can take to shift mindsets if they're feeling anxious. And they're able to walk away with the idea that you are not your thoughts. And if you're feeling some intrusive thoughts, it's okay to ask for help. There's people out there who can help.
Well, I read the book. I've read the book twice now. And I want to read it to as everybody knows, I have two adults that have, no, that's the right thing to say now, who are autistic. For so many years, it was person with autism. Now they are autistic. So anyway, I read the book. And as I said to Lisa in our pre-discussion, that I learned some stuff about it that from the book, just calling this voice a dictator. I never even thought about it as a voice. I just thought your brain is just doing this stuff to you. I didn't really, and to break it down like that must have been very helpful. So on that note, have you, since the book's come out, have you had any feedback from other parents of kids with OCD that have benefited from it?
Yes. Actually, I've had a lot of feedback from adults who bought the book for their kid and have said, I wish this was around when I was a child, or where was this book around? I've had a few meet up with me personally or message me and just break down in tears. They were very moved by this idea that they were not to blame for what was going on in their head, and that someone acknowledged the condition or believed them. So that was one key piece. It's getting lovely reviews from clinicians and counselors as well. So it's being added to their libraries around how to explain this condition to a child in a way that makes them feel normal, and that this is just a brain glitch, albeit it can be debilitating. It's not a reflection of who they are. It's not something that happens as a result of a traumatic event. So parents, relax. It's not something you did. It is a genetic neuropsychiatric condition, according to the World Health Organization. And stats vary from 1 to 40 and 1 to 100 people having it diagnosed globally around the world. So there's probably a lot more undiagnosed. So if you can imagine the population of Vancouver, Montreal, and Toronto having a diagnosed condition. And yet we don't see any supports for this in the school. It's often ignored, or even worse, people think they'll grow out of it. So this will help dispel some of those myths and hopefully dispel some of the worries that I caused this, or that there's no hope. The best way to attend to this is actually ignoring the compulsion, or defying it, or even delaying it. And that's kind of the key message in the story, that the character is empowered by disempowering the voice through choices he makes. So we're weaving in exposure and response therapy in a fun, easy way kids can understand.
Well, that's wonderful. And it's great that you found a way to spotlight, you've just said, is the lack of supports and funding. And that's also true, with what my sons suffer from as well. Pretty much everything under the mental health umbrella. I don't understand why. Do you have any thoughts on why our society doesn't think that that is something that needs to be taken care of? Let's get political.
Yeah, that's a really tough question. So generation after generation, what happened to these people? They were either hidden away, or they were told, get over it. It's all in your head. For whatever reason, if a person has cancer or another condition and has to take medication or chemo, we don't bat an eyelash. And yet when we think of injury or disorders or chemical imbalances in our brain, we somehow, this is part of that stigma busting, we somehow still think that we can ignore it. And that's certainly not the case. So I can't answer why governments don't fund this appropriately in healthcare, but working in healthcare, I can just say on the back end, I can see right now, post-COVID, how 10% of our cases lately coming into our emergency room are mental health cases. I can tell you that 108% of our mental health beds are consistently at overcapacity, and that's not right.
Yeah, yeah, and it's a shame because you go through, as you were talking about, parents blaming themselves. So often it's just because of how society was, this is what regular people do. But now at least the world is a lot more accepting of those with differences. I'm seeing that in the spans of probably 20 years since I've had diagnosed children. I've seen a lot more acceptance because people are getting exposed to it and seeing it more and more. I think it's, like you said, it's not locked away in an institution any longer. It's in the forefront, and it's actually, I'll share this, which is a nice thing. My oldest on the autism spectrum, he's an aspiring actor, and it's been a struggle for us to try to gain acceptance in that very elitist group of perfection. However, lately his agent, most of the auditions he does require the person to be on the autism spectrum when they audition. So I'm thrilled to see we are moving, maybe baby steps, but we're moving ahead to something more accepting and of your son's condition as well. So that's great.
Why we're here. The best way to raise awareness is just to keep talking about it and shine a light on it and being brave.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I also will share that, when I told my mom, when I told her about my kids, and when the second one got diagnosed, I said, oh, did you tell any of, my aunties or anything? No, dear, I think I'll leave that for you, because it was a shameful thing. My mother was a wonderful person and very accepting, but back then it was kind of a smudge, kind of an embarrassment. But I'm glad that you've sort of, you've taken the opportunity, and with your back skills and what you've gone through and shared that story, because it is wonderful, and I think it's going to help a lot of people. So a couple more things I'd like to ask, because this is for my community website. So Lisa, maybe pre-pandemic, maybe pandemic, have you can you share any businesses that you've supported, restaurants, shops that you'd like to, do a shout out to or share with the rest of us, something that's fun that you've been doing?
Is it okay if I just give a shout out to 32 Books
Yes.
and Gallery on Edgemont Village? They have been so supportive. They're selling Louie and the Dictator in their actual store. I mean, it's sold on all the online channels, and they've posted on Instagram, that this is an important book for Mental Health Awareness Month for children. So please support your local small bookstores. They're really struggling with the big Amazons and the Chapters. And I just wanted to really shout them out for supporting us in this way.
Yeah, that's wonderful to hear. It's always nice when you see the small business owner going the extra mile, and yet they get forgotten about so often, And so that's great that you mentioned that. And what has your family been doing to keep themselves entertained during this time?
We're excited to see that the cinemas have reopened, especially with all the Marvel movies coming out.
Oh, yes, yes.
My little boy is thrilled by that. And like many of you, with all this crazy busyness, we've had to eat out a little bit more. So, I mean, shout outs to all of our local restaurants for keeping us fueled at this time. Yeah, once again, keep supporting your local restaurants as well on the North Shore. Very important for these businesses to stay open.
Yeah, and okay, I'll give a little shout out. Lisa's husband, I don't know what his name is.
Simon
is apparently a member of North Shore Rescue. So a shout out and a thank you for him donating his time to such an important thing on the North Shore, for sure.
He was, up until actually the start of the pandemic. He took a little leave of absence, but he had prior to that been there for over 10 years. He had to take a leave of absence as well to support our son through some of these therapies, because there was a number of hours that he needed to put in to help us out. But absolutely, the team's great. And for those that love the story or love an adventure story within Louie and the Dictator, there is a dog rescue, very similar to how it might occur within North Shore Rescue. You might find that familiar if you're a North Shore reader.
Yeah, it was very much familiar. So is there anything else you'd like to share with us today, Lisa?
Just that the portion of the proceeds of, if I'm allowed to show it, Louie and the Dictator.
Yeah, you're a little fuzzy because of your blur.
Yeah. A portion of the royalties are going to BC Children's Hospital, specifically their pediatric OCD research clinic. They're doing some amazing work in exposure and response therapy, which is highly specialized. My hope is that another child can have the same opportunity that my child had. So this is my way of trying to give back.
Well, that's great. That's great. Well, thank you, Lisa. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your very personal story, because that will help others. That's wonderful. And I'm super happy that we connected and that I know we live close. And, you know, we're hoping to get together for coffee when our Starbucks opens again.